Finally, there's former Mayor Michael Nutter, with whom, I should say, we are producing a monthly podcast called How to Really Run a City, with him and former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, and it's been fantastic. You learn a lot about solutions. We like to call it the mystery and mastery of urban change making. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts. We should also say, in the interest of transparency, he talked about 2 weeks ago that he had brought Rebecca Reinhardt, one of the other candidates, here to Philadelphia. He hired her. He also, a year and a half ago, gave her money, but has not contributed in this campaign cycle. Just things that we want to trust our audience to know and make their own decisions about what they hear up here tonight. The way this will work is each one of these questioners will get 13 minutes of questioning before we get to your job interview questions. Now let's get this party started with the inimitable Judy von Seldenik.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you for making this possible. I've been hearing about these sessions. I cannot believe how many of you are here, and I think it's awesome here and here. And I want to say one thing about Maria Sanchez, because I love Cherelle Parker as much as anybody in the whole wide world, but when Maria Sanchez first came to Philadelphia, Ed Rendell called me up and said, "You need to support this woman and write a check." I didn't know her, and that was 20 years ago, and I'm loyal, but this is an awesome woman too, so please. And my favorite mayor's here, if he was a woman, he's who I'd really be pushing for. There's many things, but it's not that. So, first of all, I want to thank you for your service in this community, and I really want to thank you as a woman running for mayor and sticking your neck out there, representing so many of us that have long wished that we could have a woman. And I guess my question to you is, having been in public service, your career, you're getting into a situation here where you would be CEO of a very complex organization that's gotten much more complex with everything that's happening in the world today and in our city. And it requires a unique set of skills in terms of leadership. Leadership's the key word, and that's what we really desperately need. And somebody that's going to energize us, motivate us, and bring us together more than anything else. And just love to hear, you describe your style and what kind of a mayor would you be, and how would you get us, back on the trail of success that we've had in the past.
So first, let me just start by saying good evening to each of you, to the citizen, and to the distinguished panel here today. Thank you all so very much for taking the opportunity to be here and to participate in democracy, actually in action. I respect you all a great deal. I am running for mayor of this city for 3 reasons. I think my lived life experience, my professional experience, and actually government and politics, or running government, I don't know. It's the only place in the world where people think that they can do it even if they've never done it before. So some folks think that they don't even have to have an understanding with how to navigate from an intergovernmental perspective. Our American Rescue Plan revenue comes from the federal government to the local level. Some people were just happy for the money. Well, unless you understand what strings come with government money, that's not good if you can't use the revenue to replace revenue that we lost as a result of COVID. You don't know to ask those kind of questions, Judy, unless you have a level of understanding and experience about how government works. So my lived life experience, facing and living, not just because I read a white paper. Listen, data-driven, research-based, the best quantitative analysis, time value of money equations you can get. I want to read it. But guess what? Qualitative analysis is important, but quantitative is as well. It can stop you from engaging in what I call, I know what's best for you's people policy making. It happened when we saw people attempting to put Philadelphia in a box as it related to community policing and criminal justice reform. During a very difficult time during my tenure in council, I heard people shouting a very popular tone at that time, and those voices were so loud, screaming, defund the police. And some people meant, who would explain later, we really didn't mean literally what we said. We meant invest in X, invest in Y, but there was a core constituency that literally meant they wanted to do that. Well, that was different than what Ms. Johnson and Mr. Brown were saying in the neighborhoods. They were saying, where are the officers walking the beat and riding the bike? Proactively in our commercial quarters, at our recreation centers, building trust as guardians, not warriors in our neighborhoods. Judy, leadership is about having the strength and courage to say, now, I listen to the noise, but I listen to the people. And they want a comprehensive plan that includes that proposal to put 300 police officers proactively engaged in community policing in neighborhoods across the city. Better lighting, I mean, quality of life, all of a sudden, it became important for people to talk about, but improving commercial quarters, making neighborhoods greener, rehabbing, existing and abandoned housing stocks. That's something that we've always done. So Cherelle, what's the other leadership quality? I didn't believe this until I talked with someone in the business community, and I just said this to another group. You're going to be shocked and surprised that for the first time in my life, I talked to members of the business community when I said, what's most important to you right now? They said, we have a hope deficit in the city. We need to motivate, inspire, and encourage Philadelphians to have a sense of pride about where we are and make Philadelphia a desirable place that people want to come and do business in. So listen, tax policy was important. Continued reduction of wage, in Birch, streamlining, removing red tape, making it more app-based, web-based, interactive. That was extremely important. But the business community, Judy, they were talking about hope and pride. Believe me, I was shocked. So Judy, my lived experience, one, with poverty, understanding addiction, having grew up in the crack cocaine era with anybody who lived during that era, especially if you were in a black community, Keith, that you knew well. Nobody was talking about a safe crack house in our community back in the 80s and the 90s, which is why I do not support safe injection sites. People in addiction who I've interacted with have said long-term treatment, long-term housing, long-term care. So the answer to the question is my lived life experience, my professional experience, and understanding that it is important to motivate, inspire, and encourage Philadelphians to believe again in government, because I've done work that people can tangibly see, touch, and feel. They're like Baldwin. You all remember the interview. Baldwin says to the reporter who says they care about civil rights, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. We're telling people in Philadelphia that we care about them and believe in them, but we haven't put their tax dollars to work in their communities. We've got to change it. I've had some success, and now, Judy, I want to do it across the city.
Thank you for that. My next question is, in terms of future and dealing with the whole issue of poverty, as we all know, jobs is absolutely key. And bringing jobs here and attracting, other organizations to come relocate here and create jobs. Do you have a plan to do that? And can you talk a little bit about what that would be?
We can't do that if we don't take care of the poor. And the basics are that Philadelphia has to be safer, it has to be cleaner, we want it to be greener, but there has to be economic opportunity for all. If you walk into town now during the week, I know you know that the crowds, minus the pandemic, aren't at the volume that they once were. The energy that we once saw in town, yes, it's beginning to come back because of the outstanding work that Pauline Center City District and so many others have done in that area. But we also want those buildings to be filled with firms who choose Philadelphia, who want to come back because they feel the vibrancy and the growth. And if we don't fix those basics first, we're not going to be able to get much of anything else done. How do you grow the economy? How do you put people on a path to self-sufficiency? You can't do it without two essential things: workforce development and public education. I am a certified secondary English teacher by profession. I've talked to some of my educator friends about this, Judy, and not all of them were happy. When you hear me talk about workforce development in our education system, Philadelphia, we don't live in an agrarian society anymore. Our students aren't going to go work the farms for 2 months, nor are they going to Martha's Vineyard and to Shore, not all of them. So why are we not scheduling school using a year-round schedule? Listen, that doesn't just start at 9 a.m. School should be open at 7:30 in the morning. When I want to drop my son off, I have to explain to him, you have a real working mom. Langston, we can't wait. I need to drop you off because I have a meeting in town, and I can't pick you up at 3:15. So you have to stay, you have to care. What about the parents, Judy, who don't have access to early bird learning and/or aftercare? That is economic development. If you want firms to want to move here, not only do you want it safe and clean, but you want to have a friendly environment and one of the best educational systems available for the children of those people who are employed in those firms. In addition to that, out of crisis comes great opportunity. Now here's the optimist in me. Commonwealth Court just ruled. Josh Shapiro, friend of 20 years, is the governor. Joanna McClinton about to make history. Vincent Hughes in the state senate. $11+ billion state surplus. Did you see Philadelphia now? Almost a Mr. Mayor, you'd be super happy about this, $660 million fund balance right now. We are in good shape. Now is the time to, local control means nothing without dollars being driven to it, right? Local control of the school district. We have to be innovative. We have to work in a collaborative manner, and we have to think about doing things that we've never done before. And that's what we will do, Judy, in order to encourage firms to want to be here. Again, the tax base is extremely important. Lowering of wage, lowering of burden, removing red tape to make it, web-based, app-based, easier. Why do I know where Uber is and not the trash truck? Right? Very, very simple questions. We can find a way to do that, but we will encourage firms to want to be here if we are making our city safer and cleaner, and we are investing in our most valuable asset, which is our young people. It's our human infrastructure.
So all of that is so true that you say, but the bottom line is, how do you make it happen? What do you need to do as mayor to make all those wonderful things just come to reality?
In a minute.
Collaboration. Thank you. I'll do that, Larry. Collaboration, Judy. When Cherelle Park is elected mayor, Judy Von Selden has to answer the phone. Keith Lee Park, Mayor Michael Nutter, they have to answer the phone. You have to form alliances and build coalitions with people you never thought that you would have to work with in order to be successful. I am so happy that during my experience in Harrisburg, because I was forced to work and get things done in an environment that didn't allow me to have a choir behind me advocating for the same thing. So I had to work in a partisan environment with real Republicans, a governor, a House and a Senate, and I had to deliver big for Philadelphia. Public school funding, sales tax increase, a $2.3 billion transportation bill that delivered additional funding to SEPTA so that we didn't have to cut service. All of those things happened, Judy, not because Cherelle Parker was great, but because I was smart enough to pick up the phone and know that I had to get people like William Sasso and David Cohen and Brian Boyer and Sam Stateman, Joe Ashdale and Pat Iden and Gillespie to help me do what I needed to do to get the votes to get it done and to get buy-in from the private sector. Because with all due respect, I don't care if you're the mayor, I don't care if you're the president of the city council. If you're in city council, two numbers matter, 9 and 12. I don't care how good you are, how good your ideas are. If you can't muster up 9 to get what you want to get done, you can't get anything done. And then if the mayor gets cute and you really don't like his idea, you can't just tell him. You got to get 12. 9 and 12. 102 in the House or either 2/3. So those relationships with council members. And how do we know you can really do it, Cherelle? I had to work with a Republican speaker and a Republican leader who I agreed to disagree with 99 point. Ivy Soap is what, 99.9 or 44% pure? 99% of the time, I agreed to disagree with this gentleman. He is now a person I will consider to be a friend because he helped me deliver for Philadelphia and not have to come back to you and say I couldn't deliver because the big bad Republicans were in charge.
There you go, and that was Mike Thursday, right? Yeah, let's move on.
Thank you for finishing the sentence. I appreciate it.
Let's move on to Keith Lee Park.
So thank you for having me here tonight. Well, I'm extremely proud of you, having known you pretty much my entire life. To see you on the stage, it's exciting to participate in this panel. But I had to go and think about, Philadelphia as a city is very, very divided. Right? It's divided by neighborhoods, it's divided by wards, divided by divisions, and it's divided in city government. And one of the key things that we need from our mayor, future mayor, or Mel, is someone who can bring everyone together. What can you point to in your career, specifically at the state level, but specifically in city council, where you were able to bring coalitions together? We all know that there is the mighty kind of Northwest neighborhood that would go against the West Philadelphia coalition all the way above. But we need to get beyond that as a city, and let's speak about what you would do to kind of bring the city together.
I love that. So we'll minus Harrisburg and talk about Philadelphia's successes. Keith, if you want to get under my skin, because when we grew up in West Oak Lane, we were still required to sweep the curbs, the sidewalks, and the steps. So if you want to get under my skin, call our city Philadelphia. I got so tired of hearing people say it, but rather than mine be what I see so many people becoming, and that is they are expert articulators of problems, but very short on solutions. They can tell you from A to Z of what the problem is and go backwards and forwards, and you say, okay, well, while you had a seat at the table, what did you do to solve that problem? I want to use safer cleaner. I want to use cleaner. Cherelle, commercial quarters are dirty. I sit in my 5th floor office window looking out the clothespin. I think you all have a section in the paper called Ideas I Was Still. This is what Cherelle stole from Paul Levy in the Center City District. How do we fix it? I look out our window, saw a guy coming across. One guy just came from a cart, dropped the tissue on the ground. Another guy is pulling a trash can. Broom, dustpan, and what do you call it? The picker up in here. Light went off. Center City's not cleaner because no one throws trash here. They're cleaner because it's someone's job to pick up the trash that people throw. How about we do this in neighborhoods? Call Paul Levy up. You'll remember to call Paul. I got it. We need to get it done. How do I do this at 495th Street, Castor Avenue? Very honest, Cherelle. The challenges in neighborhoods, you don't have the individual tax base in those communities in order to do it. Now, you all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm an athlete. I ran track, Judy, I'm a cheerleader. Worst thing in the world you can tell me is what I can accomplish. So I'm immediately in my mind trying to figure out I partner with community development corporations in our neighborhood. I tell the mayor, like I would tell Mayor Nutter, you want my vote for the budget? This is very transparent manner. I need $2 million to get this pilot program up and going. I demonstrated works in my district. I come back to city council, the text messages, the calls with the neon shirts. They say, I'm from the 70s, so it says PHLTCB. What does the TCB mean? Taking care of business. PHL taking care of business. It's across the city now, citywide program. Black, white, community development corporations, churches, no matter the race, socioeconomic status, every section in the neighborhood, if there was a CDC available, they were clamoring to support this program, along with the neighborhood safety and community policing.
Could you point to some direct work with your colleagues? So that sounds like working with some of the CDC. Let's speak about some of the collaborative work you've done with some of your peers.
So many of you will know that we have an affordable housing crisis in the city of Philadelphia. But the most affordable home is the home that you live in, And it would get very frustrating representing a district that is what I would call landlocked. Other areas have lots of industrial space and lots of room to build new. But in areas that are high voting, high civically engaged, high rate of home ownership, like middle neighborhoods, the demand is for preservation of existing. Council President Clark and I got together and we raised the realty transfer tax so that we can generate $100 million to put $60 million into addressing the backlog for something called BSRP. That's our Basic Systems Home Repair Program. Wonderful program, but here's the problem. Income eligibility. I represented the constituency that I almost feel like people have the have-nots versus those who have a little bit. My people aren't rich, but they usually made a nickel over the income eligibility guidelines, consistent payers to the tax base, but never eligible for any programs that the city offer. So I said, Council President Clark, I can't support raising this tax without having something tangible to give to that constituency. So we started Restore, Repair, Renew. It's a program. You can have a credit score as low as 580, 10 years to pay it back, 3% fixed interest rate, borrow up to $50,000, and you can fix anything you want in your house, and you can earn up to 120% of the area median income. So those consistent payers of the tax base, they would not be included. How did I work with my colleagues? There were some who thought that 100% of that revenue should only be driven to areas that were significantly low income. And that's when I had to talk with individual colleagues who were similarly situated. I can remember Councilmember Heenan, he represented the Tacony, Mayfair area. Councilwoman Bass, right next door, Stanton, Brian O'Neill. You had formed alliances with people based on issues, because every time you need to put together 9 or 12, it's not always the same 9. So the formula that I use is the alliance and the coalition is based on what the issue is. And so that is an excellent example for neighborhood preservation initiative and commercial quarter funding. You have to get allies to support the ask in the budget. If the president gets one list, it just gets one sheet, 17 members, and only one person has, middle neighborhoods or another issue on, that's just one issue. So you get as many of your colleagues as you possibly can to support the issue. So now there's great demand, and it ends up in the budget.
Appreciate that answer. So I'll go in a slightly different direction. So, I always say Philadelphia is the original startup city, right? And as the chief executive officer of the city, you are essentially going to be responsible for selling the city to multiple constituencies, to the people in the neighborhoods, to the business community, to people we want to invest and come into the city. Give us your best sales pitch of why people would want to bring businesses to Philadelphia, why people should stay in Philadelphia considering what's happening around crime and things like that. Why should people stay in Philadelphia and why should businesses come to Philadelphia?
Talking about after Park administration has had a chance just to do get some stuff done, right?
Yes.
Because Philadelphia is not only the birthplace of democracy, it is no longer a pass-through between Washington, D.C. and New York. It is affordable. It's a 21st century, first-class, globally connected city, offering the best education, public education that can be offered in a city. In addition, we're safer, we're cleaner, and we provide access to economic opportunity for all. Jane Golding, arts and culture is jumping. Everybody wants to be here, and we've got a deputy who it's their responsibility to deal with arts and culture, and there's room in Philadelphia. It's not so big that you don't feel like you're in the neighborhood, but I don't want to go get the neighborhood or understand or meet anybody in the neighborhood if I don't feel good walking to the store. So you should invest in us because we have some of the best and brightest startups. We also have access to capital, right? And we have to be innovative in our thinking about how we use some of the leverage that the city has. And I want you to think about some funds that we control as it relates to supporting small businesses, particularly people who scream they want to support small businesses and the only thing they talk about is access to debt capital. They never talk about private equity, patient capital, or venture capital. Well, who's Shark Tanking for black and brown people in the city of Philadelphia, minus technology and training assistance. And so those are all of the reasons why. And it won't just be because the mayor said it. How about if you can look at our population and no longer are they calling us six? We're back. Let's get out of here. We're back to our fifth spot. And we're growing. We're growing. We're getting back to where we belong because people are choosing to listen. We're being forward thinking with proposed development and growth in the city. People are engaged in their communities and people want to choose Philadelphia because they see what's happening.
So I think one of the reasons why people don't choose Philadelphia or choose to leave is because of the education system, right? So I'd like for you to speak on what we can do to address that immediately within the first 4 years of any mayor's term.
In two minutes.
Quickly, and we're going to try to be as short as we possibly can, but Larry, you have to understand this. I have a breadth and depth of intergovernmental experience that no one else brings to this race. And I've got to take my time and explain this. Thank you so much for your patience. Let me just say this, Keith, workforce development. Everybody's not going to college. The Apple technician at the Genius Bar who went to college and dropped out because I'm an English teacher. I think it's blasphemy. How could he not like literature and reading and writing papers? But he did say what he liked to do was to take things apart and put them back together. How does he end up being an Apple technician, taking things apart and putting things together? Guess what Apple did? They sent him to Apple school. Then that person's an Apple technician. Why are we not training for every industry that's growing in the city of Philadelphia within our schools? Also, employment opportunities here in the city of Philadelphia. We should be training our young, I don't care if it's police, I don't care if it's fire, I don't care if it's building engineers or inspectors at L&I. Why are we not training our folks? And listen, Keith, I'm not just, because it's so frustrating hearing people talk about sending someone to a training school and you have a family to take care of a mortgage to pay and they want you to go to school and just train. And you say, well, how am I going to pay my bills? Making sure people are earning while they're learning. And we can do that immediately through partnership, the year-round school proposal. I can't unveil right now how we're talking about paying for that. You'll see that in more detail on my website, and we'll announce that soon. But we also have to remember this, and I'm unapologetic about this. Traditional teachers will not be the only instructors in public education. We must have the private sector engaged in training and teaching our young people. There's no way we can compete in the 21st century global economy, in the industries that are thriving in our city. We don't have actively engaged in our educational system. And I don't care if we're talking about traditional publics and or charters. I support quality seats. Okay, no charters at the expense of traditional publics, which is why I want that charter school reimbursement line item restored that we lost under the Corbett administration. But we need quality seats keep, and we can do that immediately with the year-long school. You know, I'm always very frustrated about people looking at folks living in poverty and almost basically deciding what's best for them. You're not talking to them about what it is that they are interested in doing. And if you talk to people who live in neighborhoods or are living in poverty across the city, they want access to opportunity. They don't want to have to go get surplus food, similar to what I did when I had to do when I grew up. They don't want to have to do that. We need to use government as a tool to put people on the path to self-sufficiency so that they can take care of themselves. If you do it, you will be surprised at the significant reduction in violent crime and violence that you'll see in the city of Philadelphia if we do it right.
All right, let's great questions, Keith. Let's move on to former Mayor Michael Leonard with some of the greatest socks I've ever seen.
Awesome.
Generally not known to be a fancy person, but I figured I'd at least get some nice socks. Good evening. But before I ask a question, given what I used to do for a living, I just want to ask folks to take a moment. Think about Temple University police officer Christopher Fitzgerald. Incidents in our city touch all of us in very different ways. Dealt with a lot of these issues during my time. I'm going to try to do a little bit of lightning round with you. We have a little clock over there. I'd like to get
He's laying it down.
I'd like to get most of my questions. You were asked earlier about why you wanted the position. I'm going to come at that from a different perspective. Was there a moment, an incident, a circumstance that compelled you to run for mayor? 30 seconds.
You didn't answer questions like this in 30 seconds. Mr. Mayor, was member of City Council watching a difference in style and how the city of Philadelphia was responding to neighborhood preservation, stabilization across the city as it related not just to equity and growth. I'm talking about when they were building new, but I watched neighborhoods that were once thriving communities begin to decline. And I sort of, went on and was intentional about raising the red flags about middle neighborhoods and their decline in the city of Philadelphia. And that's when I knew there was a way that we can do both.
Thanks. I think the rest of my questions fall in a category of judgment, mindset, and decision-making. This is a position that requires a significant amount of personal judgment. You may not have all the information you need. And when I hire people, I always wanted to know their thought process, how they dealt with information. In the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd 3 years ago, you introduced Bill 200363 that reimposed the one-year residency requirement that people had to live in the city for a year before they could have even applied for a job, and it also applied to police officers. Was that a knee-jerk reaction to the murder of George Floyd?
One, absolutely not, but let's just get this clear on the record. I was the majority leader of the City Council of Philadelphia, and you know the role of the majority leaders to introduce legislation on behalf of the president.
I fully understand.
And
You also
just,
co-sponsored it.
but just for the record, I just want the record to be clear.
I understand.
Not only was I co-sponsor of the bill, but I was the lead advocate for the bill publicly because I wholeheartedly. And part of the reason why is because I don't retract my support on residency. I want us to create as many jobs as possible that give Philadelphia residents the ability, Mr. Mayor, to have those jobs. But you know, and I want the
There's
viewing
nothing to
audience.
prevent Philadelphians from getting those.
No, but I want to be real
It's
clear
our
about
ability
this.
to hire people.
No, I want to be real clear about this, Mr. Mayor. Residency and that legislation have been the law of the land for years. That legislation was changed by current Mayor Jim Kenney. That was his legislation when he was a member of the City Council of Philadelphia.
No, actually, I changed it.
Well,
We changed it when I came in.
with all due respect, Mayor Jim Kenney, I'm talking about not giving through negotiating, giving Philadelphia police officers and firefighters the ability to live outside the city. That is something separate, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
You gave Philadelphia firefighters and police officers the ability to live outside the city.
No, actually, an arbitrator did that.
But it was during your 10 years, Mayor. So when they were homeowners here, they were outside. My point is that Mayor Jim Kenney, who was very much a strong advocate for not having the residency requirement, who served with you in the City Council of Philadelphia. Like I was the lead advocate for the residency bill, although it wasn't mine. Jim Kenney was the lead advocate for that issue.
I just want to make sure we're not mixing items here. This is about establishing residency before you can ever take a civil service test. In an environment where we were already struggling to hire police officers in the first place. So I don't think it's about Philadelphians getting jobs or not getting jobs. We need more officers. My only question is, why was the bill introduced that reversed the previous policy when we don't have enough officers in the first place? Why would we make it more difficult to hire people? Regardless of where they came from.
I reject the narrative, and I know, and I know you know this, Mr. Mayor, so when you hear me give this clarity, this is not for you because you already know this, but for the benefit of the viewing public. There's a residency requirement in the city of Philadelphia for municipal employees. Whenever there is a position that we cannot find a Philadelphian to occupy, the mayor has the ability to ask for something called a waiver. And the mayor asks for this waiver, which is very much an administrative, bureaucratic process that you ask for when you communicate with HR, along with our Civil Service Commission that is appointed by the mayor. So when I would get in debates on television about it, and people would use it, as an excuse, I talked to reporters, I would say, listen, it's a red herring. The mayor has the ability to ask for a waiver to fill any job in the city of Philadelphia, with or without, with a residency requirement. And so to me, it was red herring. I need more police. I advertise it. It's a tool. The mayor just didn't use it. And I said it publicly long before this interview.
So a year ago, after all that, you proposed, and you talked about here tonight, hiring 300 more police officers. We have 21 police districts, and that would result in 5 officers per shift in all of those districts. We also lose nearly 300 police officers a year to retirements and the drop program. And so that's a net wash. You'd have to hire hundreds and hundreds of more officers to actually put more officers on the street, because the 300 that you're talking about get erased by the 300 that we lose annually. So how did you come up with the 300 number?
For the benefit of the audience, I want you to remember what I said earlier. expert articulators of problems versus those who pose solutions. When I introduced that plan, Mr. Mayor, and I called for those 300 officers proactively engaged in community policing, I also offered a solution. Now, Mr. Mayor, some people could differ with me, or say they agree to disagree with the solution I proposed, but at that time I said we should rehire retirees without stopping their pension benefits, have them on desk duty or inside the office doing administrative work, and get able-bodied men and women, back on the street. Now, Mr. Mayor, I introduced the legislation, and you know what happened? But you know what happened?
220-487.
We introduced the legislation in the law department, and you know that department as well. They said to us on the public record, and district council person in particular doesn't like this, Cherelle, you can continue to move forward with this legislative process, but the mayor has the ability to do it right now as temporary workers. The mayor can bring them back. They cannot stay on for more than 3 years, or else the pension and health care requirement would have to kick in. But the mayor can do it right now. I remember Governor Rendell, former Mayor Rendell, calling me once he read that I had, introduced this legislation. He said, wow, first you had the heart to introduce the plan. Now you have the heart to figure out how we can, fill that void because of this nationwide shortage immediately. So that's how I propose to address it, Mr.
No, I understand. On that legislation, though, there was significant opposition by at least some of the city unions. Secondly, to be blunt, some of the folks might not actually want them back.
Well, the first thing we had to make sure of, Mr. Mayor, and this is the difference, is when you heard me say I introduced the plan, it's like me standing up and saying that I support Terry stops. I support zero tolerance for any misuse and or abuse of authority by law enforcement, and will do exactly in the police commissioner functioning under Parker administration would do what Commissioner Ramsey did when there was some who engaged in the misuse and abuse of authority. He fired them immediately. Some people got their jobs back through arbitration, but under another administration and the Ramsey Police Department, zero tolerance, they were gone, sue me later, we'll talk soon. That was the case with the Parker plan that I introduced. So some people could say, well, who would want them back? Well, now you're saying that I wouldn't have a human resources department within the police department that would be vetting the officers who would be even eligible to come back. Obviously, we wouldn't allow anyone with a checkered past, but that's an administrative function, that oversight and leadership of the department. They would have boxes to check to ensure that anyone coming back, they would have to have a clean jacket in order to do so. And when you hire the kind of leadership of the police department and for HR that I plan on bringing on during the Parker administration, you get the best and the brightest, and people will do their job, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with you. Some people didn't like it, but that was my solution. When other people were screaming about it being a challenge, Mr. Mayor, recruiting the challenge, using the residency requirement, although we had a waiver, to me it was a red herring, I proposed a solution.
Right. Toughest decision in public service. It's a question. Toughest decision in public service. It's a question. I'm sorry.
Staffing. Having the best and the brightest to serve.
No, I'm sorry. Maybe the toughest decision that you've had to make in public service.
This goes back to my tenure in Harrisburg, when we had two competing issues that needed to be addressed at the same time. The one was funding for the school district of Philadelphia, when Dr. Height informed us that unless the city got enabling authority to have new additional recurring revenue, schools would not open. But at the same time, we were dealing with a transportation crisis, roads, bridges, and highways crumbling, set the $5 billion capital backlog, trains about to be canceled, cars weren't getting fixed, and you have to put together the coalitions necessary, as you heard me state. You got to get to 102 to get bills through the chamber. And transportation moved before the funding for public education.
Believe me, I remember.
Oh, yeah, so
Worst
that
decision.
was tough. That's extremely
Worst
tough.
decision you've made in public service.
Worst decision. Worst decision was during the mandatory reporting of lost and stolen guns. First time we ever got a vote on the record in the General Assembly, NRA, most powerful lobby in the Commonwealth. My legislation, but you'll remember Dave Ladansky from Western Pennsylvania, he was a hunter. We said, wow, he's not afraid. This is common sense legislation. Joe Grace is with C5. We put together the coalition. I did not invest enough time, Holly Kinzer, in talking with Republican hunters and Democratic hunters from rural Pennsylvania. Instead of my simply saying, we don't agree on this issue, I should have sat down and talked with them a little bit more instead of just not counting them. So we sent out the co-sponsorship memo, we sent the team of people to visit you, we called you and asked you would you support, and you said no. And we have our yes, no, maybe, groups, columns, and I let them stay in the no, because they gave me an easy no. And, my grandmother would say, instead of taking a fast no, you could wait for a slow yes. I didn't work hard enough for the slow yes. And if I had it to do all over again, I would have worked more to GTY to get to yes.
Let's move on to, thank you for those questions and answers. Let's move on to audience questions, and my man Charles Ellison here from Word. We're running a little bit behind, so we'll probably only do a few of these, but go at it, Charles.
Councilwoman, how are you doing? Good evening. Congratulations, you've made it to the next round. All right. Okay, these are audiences from the questions from the audience. Here's the first one. What 3 outcomes do you use to measure the performance of city government?
Tangible results first, that people can see, touch, and feel. Qualitative analysis and then quantitative analysis. I have to see it and touch it. It can't just be on paper. In order to get people to believe that it works, they need to see it as well. But I also want to measure it. And so as we think about systems for determining how you will measure success or failure, I just literally decided on one in a prior meeting. You heard me mention earlier, Judy. It was that one of the things I want to be measured on, because a lot of people have had a whole lot of big poverty plans, but how about measuring me on the number of Philadelphians who were receiving cash assistance or TANF food stamps and or a blue medical card? That means their support, like I had to get public assistance and my grandmother got cash welfare and food stamps to take care of me. How about you measure my impact on reducing poverty during my first 4 years by seeing how many people do we get off those rolls and into employment opportunities and careers where they are earning a living wage, health care, and have access to retirement security. I know it's not sexy, but I want to be measured that kind of way. It's pretty intense, but that's how I determine whether or not I'm being effective.
All right. The next question. Black women represent 73% of pregnancy-related deaths in the city of Philadelphia. What is your Black maternal mortality plan?
One, we got to make sure that Black women are heard by their physicians. I'm a part of the OAM club. I can't say on air what that means. The only thing I'll tell you is that I was 39, my first and only child. He's 10 years old. You know what OAM means? We have to make sure women are getting connected to service, and your zip code shouldn't determine whether or not you get access to quality health care. Why does this issue become a passion for me? Charles, my mother was a single teenage mom who got pregnant with me when she was 15 years old. So you know that means she didn't go to work. She didn't earn the right to have her own health care to take care of her pregnant self. I was taken care of by my grandparents who, because I lost my mother earlier, depended on government because she was a domestic worker and she had no retirement security. So making sure that regardless of someone's race, class, socioeconomic status, but Black women in particular, making sure that physicians are listening to them, they're connected to health, educational opportunities, like this inequality care. Ayla Stanford said we need more. Think about how many OBGYN units we closed in hospitals in our region, and that was occurring when I was in Harrisburg, so we have to do a better job.
All right, thank you. Next question. What quality of life improvements can disabled Philadelphians expect to see during your administration? And this person in the audience adds that over 15% of Philadelphia residents are disabled.
Listen, fortunately, and I know this was as a result of, not in essence of the city's choice, but as a result of case law in the court's ruling, but I want you to imagine a pedestrian-friendly Philadelphia. A pedestrian-friendly Philadelphia, right? One where you can walk and you can ride your bike, and it is safer and it is cleaner and it's greener, so it's aesthetically appealing. But there is an opportunity for you to experience the vibrancy of your city, no matter your mode of transportation. That's how they know. And listen, from an economic development perspective, there is no one who's been a member of the City Council of Philadelphia who's done more work with neighborhood-based economic development than Cherelle Parker has. That's been my baby.
What would you do with the hundreds of millions, it's close to billions, of dollars still unspent from the federal government's COVID emergency allocation to Philadelphia? I'll probably add there's also unspent monies out there from bipartisan infrastructure law and some other spots too, but go ahead and answer.
So let's make that the last one for the audience questions, because we're running a little bit behind. Go ahead.
Sorry.
We're going to make this the last one from the audience.
That's one.
Okay, just as an FYI, Charles, leverage it. Long before rebuild, and listen, I thank God for my constituents because they are the ones who push me so extremely hard. But long before there was a rebuild, Charles, people who lived in the 9th district or the 200 legislative district, you will notice that they have quality amenities as it relates to their parks, rec centers, and even their libraries, because we've always used an intergovernmental approach. What do I mean? The state senator, the council person, the state rep, everybody leverages their vote to put a nickel in the pot. When you get the quarter, you rehab the center, Finley, Dorothy Emanuel, Pleasant Playground. And so we will be able to make sure that we are leveraging these dollars. One, we have to have a capital budget for the rebuilding of Philadelphia schools. The Fund Our Schools Coalition, they did an outstanding job. You can advocate all you want. If it's not a line item, it's some coordinated activity to rebuild Philadelphia schools, demolish them and rebuild them, it won't happen. Next, to address the affordable housing crisis, remember, building of new, preservation of existing. We have to make sure that we continue to incentivize that as much as we can. And I have to mention this only because I see some people who are here today and I see the Renner shirt. And Philadelphia, no matter how long people have referred to us, so we've been the poorest big city in the nation, we've always had a high rate of home ownership, especially amongst Black people. But guess what? And brown folks. Now, we're almost basically 50-50. The only people I want renting in Philadelphia are the people like my girlfriend who's here. I saw her, little shorty, when I was coming in. She says, I'm not shoveling snow or picking up leaves ever again. So don't try to sell me on home ownership, Cherelle, I don't want to do it. But she's the only person. Her people situated like her, not because that dream is out of reach and building a generational wealth is not something that's available to you. I want you to have that opportunity.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Carter, I have one final question for you that I've asked all the candidates, that if you're elected mayor, would you agree now to come back as mayor and do a session like this as an annual performance review?
All of the time, and don't you all tell, but this is probably one of the best parts of the trail, because this is when we really get an opportunity to interact with you, and you get an opportunity to hear us unfiltered. Like, with all due respect, Larry, you're a journalist. There are a lot of journalists who are here today. I have some press people who are here today. But what I like about this is you get a chance to experience me, see me, feel me, and you don't use Larry as a filter. You can decide for yourself.
We're gonna stay here and bring out Helen again because we're running a little bit behind. So we're gonna take a quick photo up here and then just go straight to our next candidate.
Okay, I'm gonna text you. Like 21 minutes. Okay, you gonna hang out? Or text me when you're ready, okay? Thank you.
Councilmember Parker, we are so indebted. We can be critical of our public officials, but so indebted to people who are in the arena, who put themselves in the arena. I just want to thank Councilmember Parker and Councilmember Ginn for their public service. And I also, I've noticed a lot of council candidates in the office. If you're running for city council, can you stand? Let's acknowledge people who are running for city council. There are others too, I think. So they're putting themselves out there, and we're going to be critical of them, but we want to support them in their public service. So let's get to the panel, and we'll begin with 13 minutes. Judy Selnick, Helen again.
Thank you. Nice. I do this every night. I don't get treated like this at home or anywhere. I think being a politician would be fun. You guys. Helen, I just want to thank you along with everybody else for your great service. You've just been wonderful city councilwoman and just done a great job, and really appreciate your willing to risk running for mayor as a woman. Very exciting. So I guess my question to you is that this job as mayor is probably as complex as it's ever been, given everything that's going on in the city and the world and everywhere. And your background really has been, primarily government education. I sort of think about this as a corporate job and being the CEO of a very complex organization, and your leadership skills and ability to attract top talent, to motivate, inspire, energize, but more important than anything is to bring an organization together. It's been through, a lot of trauma, and this is happening in corporate America everywhere. I'm in the business of helping some of these companies find people to work through that. And so, I think in this election, in this day and age, the skill set and would love to hear, how would you get us back on the right track, bring us together, provide the leadership, and what would be your solutions? What's the bottom line? How are you going to solve poverty? How are you going to solve unemployment? How are you going to solve education?
Yeah, 10 minutes left.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and it's a wonderful time to be here. And thank you to the citizens. Thank you so much, everybody, for spending your evening with me. And Judy, thank you also as well for being a fearless champion of women in elected office and in leadership all across the city of Philadelphia. So I think your question comes down to, I've got 30 years of experience inspiring and leading the city towards wanting to make change. And I did this largely without political titles or power. The world that I come out of, I don't bring political titles to be invited to the table. What I do bring is a different kind of skill set. I know how to build and mobilize unusual types of coalitions of people who can actually go out there and exhort for change. I know how to bring really smart and innovative policy solutions to really sticky situations. And I have a relentless focus on actually fixing problems that change the ways in which people live. And I want to make sure that those are the people who are able to say that something is different today than it was yesterday. That to me is one of the big things. It's one of the reasons that I just don't do, before I ever came into office, I would say, that's how I got the Philadelphia Parking Authority, to pay the first money to our public schools in years and years and years. I walked into one of the most dangerous high schools in the state that had been on the list time and time again, and we turned it around because we organized young people to hold a school system accountable for a safe learning environment, which is literally the most essential thing that they needed to get an education. I don't ever accept half-assed ideas to fix really big problems. And I think because of that, people around me get better. I think that I really value people at every level of an organization because I think they have a critical role to play about how to transform things. It's not just about a top-down edict issuing, somebody just declaring things left and right. It's really about getting people at all levels of your organization to buy into something that they never did before, because they're ultimately the ones that are going to be able to deliver on that. And then finally, I think the biggest thing is that I am just, you probably heard that I'm pretty relentless. And I probably should sleep more, but I think that is the kind of stuff that I'm bringing to the table each and every day. And I think it's what's enabled me to do things, even when I didn't have the political title and power to do it. And when I was on council, I was able to show what I could do. But as mayor, I intend to lead with that same kind of leadership and vision to take on the city's biggest problems and to prove that we actually never had to live like this, that we could fix the things that held us back.
So given where we are today in the city and the problems and the challenges that we face, what would you say are the top 3 positions that would be the most important for you to fill in your administration? And how would you hold them accountable?
Yep, so my managing director, no question. I think that there will be the police commissioner, no question. And the next education secretary, officer, whomever, because I have been very clear from day one that this city will not succeed unless we bring our city and our school system together. Every mayor before me has effectively either turned their back on our public schools or has failed to fulfill the promise of what education can be. And I will be that mayor that is going to make sure that our city and our schools are going to rise together. I do not see it happening any other way. That is a common mission, and I think that we're going to deliver that. Now, how do we hold them accountable? I've said very clearly, all roads lead to the mayor. I think it's about having a clear mission, a vision. It's about a select set of priorities, not 10,000 things all at once. But if safety, cleanliness of our city, and the education and well-being of our kids are our top priorities right now, then let's get to work and make it happen, and make sure that everybody within the organization knows they have a critical role to play to make that possible.
I love that you're so specific. So now I'm going to ask you another question that I hope you'll be equally specific about, and it's the enormous crime problem we have. What exactly would you do about it, and what would your time frame be for getting it back to where we can all be comfortable again?
I think that all of us are grieving the loss of Officer Chris Fitzgerald, and I hope that his legacy will be a safer city. And, I've been very clear that I intend to deliver by taking action, that there are things that we have to do right away. That's why I called for a day 1 state of emergency. We've talked about the coordination of pulling all of our city agencies together, zeroed in on key areas like taking illegal guns off of our streets and creating a multi-federal state county task force to help us do that. It's about making sure that we are zeroed in on 911 response times, because right now, if you call for help, everyone should know that help is on the way. And we have the 2nd highest 911 response times in the country, and that is just not acceptable. And, that 3rd area is really making sure that we get officers and other people out onto the streets with a visible presence of both restoring public trust, but also keeping eyes out for people and letting them know that people are not alone right now. But I'm also really clear that as much as we're going to talk about all of this, protections and crime, the fundamental root causes of the things that we are dealing with have a lot to do with the failure of investment that happens in communities that are deeply racked by violence. You can see it from the moment a child walks out of their door, from the fact that they pass by streets that are, beyond filthy and dirty, because of the fact that we see vacant lots and all these types of things. There are actually immediate things that we can do that are investment-based, that aren't just about leaning into the fear and all the other things that, that have defined this conversation about safety, but is actually about investing in communities that have been too far left behind. I I want to say this, I don't think any of that stuff is like long-term. Those are immediate responses. Cleaning and brightening up streets is an immediate response to crime in dangerous neighborhoods that are dark and frightening and filthy right now. And there is plenty of research and work by Eugenia South that proves all of that. I want to make sure that we're dealing with mental health and, adequate treatment and supports. It's one of the reasons why I fought to make sure that we piloted the first non-police mental health crisis response units so that police officers could respond to the issues that people wanted them to respond to, and trained EMTs and first responders and mental health specialists can respond to those that are being requested by the individuals asking. We know that works, and that's deeply important. And I am obviously just going to be deeply concerned about what's happening to young people. I think today, before we walked in, we just read about another 2 children who were harmed by gun violence on their way home from school, and it is shocking that we've had over 90 young people being hurt by gun violence since the year started. And I have been very clear that we just cannot have this. Parents cannot be afraid to send their children to school. And so I want to see our city zeroed in on safe passages to and from school so that children can be assured that they are safe heading and coming back from the most important institution to them, and that is getting their education.
Thank you. My question is, what do you see are the key obstacles that are preventing you making these changes, and why is it more happening? Why is this dragging on so much? I mean, what are we missing? And is it resources? Is it bad communications? I mean, why this has been going on far too long? What do you see as the challenges? What are you going to do to pick up the pace here?
Picking up the pace is definitely something that I am always invested in and kind of known for procrastinating. I would say that a lot of the problems that we have in the city are largely because there are so many different agencies that are largely outside the purview of city control. When you talk about, and it's really almost every big thing that we can think of, whether it's housing, whether it's safety, whether it's education, you're talking about multiple agencies that are responsible that are largely outside of the direct control of the mayor. So the mayor's power and the mayor's responsibility right now is not just to convene, but to actually coordinate and mobilize people towards action and inspire them to be part of a unified response system, even if they may not be directly accountable to that mayor. That takes a very different skill set than what many people are used to be having. And I also think that it takes a different kind of leader. I have, since we just ended Eagle season, right? So, I think some people want to be somebody, like they just want to be a mayor. And I don't know, I sometimes think that some mayors think that they are quarterbacks on a team. And I've just never felt that, a mayor is the quarterback for me. It's not some kind of glass jaw Tom Brady type, who doesn't want to get hit. Like, to me, the mayor is your offensive line, right? You're taking the hits, you're making the tackles, and at the end of the day, your team runs through. Not you, but your team makes it across the finish line. And that is either your school kids, or it's people who deserve housing in the city, it's children who deserve a real opportunity, young people looking for a job, a parent asking themselves whether this is a place to call home. Like, to me, those are the people that have to make it across. And I do think that a lot of mayors maybe want to be somebody and don't realize how many hits you actually have to take in order for the city to rise. But I think I'm that kind of person.
Great. Let's move on to Dr. Keith Lee-Park.
Pleasure
Thank you.
to see you, Dr. Helen. So I want to start off, and I think, many people would say that you are probably the most progressive candidate. Would you agree?
We should keep talking.
Okay. Say you're probably one of the most progressive candidates, and I think one of the concerns around you know, the direction of the city is that maybe we've gotten too progressive. And specifically when it comes to, and I just might get you in trouble, will get me in trouble, specifically when it comes to public safety, right? We've seen that we've gotten, and this is coming from someone who worked in reentry, worked with Mayor Nutter on prison reform, was talking about criminal justice reform 10, 12 years ago. There's a balance here in the city where I think we may have gone too far to the left as it relates to you know, criminal justice reform and public safety. The other area is there's a concern around what happens from a business culture, right? Where would you be as it relates to building a pro-growth culture as it relates to the business community? So could you talk to those who are concerned around us going too far and you being closer to a Larry Krasner versus, you know, someone who's putting us in a center position?
Okay, so first thing I want to say is I am running for mayor. I am not running for district attorney. I am running for mayor of the city of Philadelphia, and it's a very different type of position. I think, you know, people who want to line folks up on some kind of ideological spectrum that honestly just came up since Trump are missing the boat on politics. I was doing a lot of this work before there was ever a word for progressive. There was people who believed in their public schools. There believed that we had overly mass incarcerated to the point that it actually depressed opportunities for communities all across Philadelphia. There were people who believed in a vibrant, healthy global economy that relied as much on immigrants and new residents and made sure that people in our city could stay long, you know, could age gracefully in our city with. The idea that we have warped ourselves in the last literally 5 years on this like spectrum on what is progressive, what is not progressive, has taken us away from the really two big ideologies that are in politics right now. The people who get stuff done and the people who talk about it. I have learned in my time before I ever got into office what it looked like to actually get something done. To take a school system. When I came in, we had shut down 30 public schools. We were on a massive disinvestment. My kids went to schools, had elementary and middle schools that did not have nurses and counselors in them. And when I got into office, I would say that I was going to be a totally different kind of leader. And we did start to turn around a mass disinvestment in our schools, made sure that we brought back nurses and counselors, social workers, arts and music back to every public school. I made sure that we got a clean water campaign going that would mobilize a $500 million infrastructure campaign for new school buildings, and that is how you grow a city. That is actually what you do to turn things around and get us off this merry-go-round of are you this or are you that, little labels that people put on to make the world make sense. The world is not making sense right now, and tapping on labels is not going to fix or help you understand a political candidate. Understanding who they are and what they have done based on their actual track record on taking on big problems is what actually does, in my opinion. And I think
Pro-business. What do you add on the business?
I believe in a flourishing business community. There is absolutely no way that our city doesn't grow unless we see our business community grow at all levels, small, middle, and large businesses as well. And I have been invested in growing our city. I'm very proud to be part of a group of people that have always said that we're going to grow our city by attracting new residents, by keeping the economy going and vibrant, by making sure that it's local and small and that we're reaching into communities all over Philadelphia, and that the defining mission for business for me is that opportunity. Like, it's just got to say opportunity for all. And I just want, I believe that I have tried to lead that mission. I think I've helped grow Philadelphia. I think some of the communities that I've been part of have been part of the, significant growth. I'm very proud that, in the middle of the pandemic, we were able to do a census that proved that we were the fastest growing city in the Commonwealth, growing by over 80,000 now. We got to hang on to that. And it's very clear, for me at least, that we need to grow it, and I would say that a little bit more of my priority, especially in this post-COVID recovery environment where everything is really uncertain right now. The best way for me to attract jobs to Philadelphia is by making sure those employees in those companies actually want to live there. that is the difference, because companies can be located in many different places right now, but their employees have to live here. And I know that when I make Philadelphia desirable for Philadelphians, other people will want to see the city as much as we do. And I'm committed to doing that.
So what are those things specifically you would point to that make Philadelphia desirable for those businesses and those people who live?
Yeah, so I don't think there's any question that there's a lot that we can do in terms of hanging up that welcome sign. I have heard from businesses plenty of times that our city is unwieldy and it is unresponsive, and I hope that I will do everything possible, as I have done with, with my other types of work, to be as responsive and welcoming and engaged with businesses all over. That includes, making sure that the Commerce Department has a really healthy business services division. That's making sure that there are maybe, economic hubs in every neighborhood so people can go in, pay fines, address permits, get questions answered, resolve problems without having to see City Hall as a big black hole that sucks everything in. I want to make sure that, that we have a real opportunities and investment fund and a mindset around that. But I'm also really clear that when I listen to a lot of businesses, they are very clear that education, safety, and cleanliness are top of mind in terms of what they want to see for their companies, as well as for their employees. And so I am going to lean in on that. I mean, this is our bread and butter. Education, safety, and cleanliness is the things that not only meet a business need, it meets the needs of neighborhoods all across Philadelphia. I want us to approach this conversation about how to grow our city from one that actually builds the most resilient city and stronger communities, healthier children, and people who have dignity in their everyday life, but not just at work.
So, it sounds like you go over your top three priorities as education. What are your top three priorities and the goals associated with those?
I think that there's no question that the community safety issue is paramount. And so I think that, we talked about some of those things, including like a 100-day agenda that I sort of laid out, that I want to really take, if we didn't go through that, I'm happy to go through that again. But as I said before, mayors have left our public school system behind, and I am not going to do that. I have had a 30-year track record in how we turn around our public schools, how we actually make sure that we are going to put all of our capital resources into getting our schools back into shape, making sure that we are inspiring a new generation of educators and individuals who can fill our public schools, and that we're taking a really concerted effort to see a 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7-day a week, 365-day a year approach towards caring for our kids from universal pre-K all the way up to college and beyond. That's the mindset that we're going to have to do in order to make that promise to every family member, to every new parent who's asking about whether the city will be safe for them, or any 10-year-old that ever looks at you in the eye and says, is the city safe for me? And that answer has to be yes. This city is for you. It's all about you and your opportunities. And then I think the third thing is, I'm leaning on a vibrant, I'm leaning on this, not even a vision, but I feel the heartbeat of the city all the time through the people and communities that are hungry for economic opportunity, for a chance to demonstrate life and vitality. And so I want to bring that back to the city of Philadelphia. I want to bring some joy back to our city. I'd like to see us lean in the city of the sounds of Philadelphia to bring back arts and culture, to remind ourselves that our parks can be filled not just with darkness and gates and surrounding things that keep out signs, but actually be filled with the life and vitality of barbecues and picnics and birthday celebrations and other types of things, music venues for places that don't have easy access to museums. These are not far off things. These are not things that cost millions of dollars to do. They are at our fingertips. And my personal belief is that if I'm a different kind of leader, then everything has to change. That starts with budgets, that starts with policies, and it starts with an attitude that this city The mayor and all of city government has to get out of City Hall and back out into the communities where all the life and all the possibilities actually are.
Coming to that, what would you point to as some of your biggest kind of legislative successes?
I think, when I first came in, I heard that there were almost 1 in 14 renters who were being evicted. That is 22,000, not people, but households every single year, 500 every single week, 52 weeks out of the year. And it was like everything was geared towards that. I remembered when I was a teacher, and I would say, so-and-so isn't here today, and do we know what happened? And the thing that always struck me was that it wasn't like a city official, it wasn't a school district official, it wasn't my principal who told me. It was like their classmate, is a 10-year-old that said, they got evicted, and so he's not coming to school anymore because they don't live here. And I have never forgotten what it meant to have a young child just be so disrupted like that. So when I came in and I heard and saw all these statistics, and I saw everything that we were doing just geared towards an eviction with no offering, no opportunity for anybody to say, hey, let's try and do something different. Everything was lined up against it. There were court systems, there was a sheriff's office, you had city agencies, laws that were on the books, and I had to figure out how to turn that around. And so, you don't go to the places where harm is being caused, because it's not a great place to start a conversation about how we're going to fix something. You go out to the people, and we held town halls and speak outs, and we put a face on people who are experiencing evictions, because they weren't random people. They aren't just a signer on a contract. They were women, they were mothers, they were caretakers of the disabled, the elderly, and of children. And as soon as we shone a face on them, as soon as we listened to them say what it meant to keep a roof over your head, or that a medical bill now threw you out of the house in a wheelchair and almost nothing else, I really found that everything changed. Like however people came into the conversation, they just reoriented themselves, and it was just different. And so those things started to open up. We started off with a pilot project, $500,000 to go for a tenant legal defense fund, and then it continued to grow. And when the pandemic hit, this is a question, like when crisis hits, what do we do? The principle was already clear. We keep our people housed, because that's what happens today. And we ended up building out one of the most successful eviction prevention programs in the country. We slashed evictions by 2/3. We kept 50,000 plus people housed every single year. We distributed $250 million in rent assistance to tens of thousands of landlords in what was probably the biggest rescue effort of a single industry in any time. And now today, 180 cities across 36 states, red and blue, progressive, whatever they want to call themselves, I'm sure they're not using the word progressive, copied what we started right here in Philadelphia. And look at a little better, Joe Biden, in his National Renter Bill of Rights, included the law that started in Philadelphia, eviction diversion, as a cornerpiece of a national mission to reform and keep people housed in crisis. And I think that what that proved to me, because that beginning was not 20 years ago. That beginning was yesterday. It was literally 5 years ago that we started out with this. That transformation from this to here was about not a bunch of electeds telling us what was politically possible. It was about a people making themselves visible and saying everything had to change. And I told you, we never had to live like this before.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Let's move on to our last questioner, Mayor Michael Nutter.
Thanks, Larry. Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I'd like to have more of a lightning round experience with you. And most of my questions will be in the area of judgment, decision-making, and thought process. So, the School District of Philadelphia somewhere in the last week, 10 days, actually sued the city, which seems rather unreal, if not dysfunctional, but I'm going to put that to the side. It's regarding Bill 210685AA, the Special Certification of Inspection Bill. You co-sponsored that bill. If you're mayor, you'll actually be the defendant in that suit. How will you defend the city against the school district regarding a bill that you co-sponsored and voted for?
Yeah, so to be clear, I will also have a new school board, and I will be making sure that our school board is working in concert with the city. That bill related to whether schools could open after tremendous renovations have been done. Yeah.
I don't want to go through the history of the bill. It's a specific question about your actions as mayor involving a bill that you sponsored, and now you're on the other side of the table.
I'm trying to explain that, Mr. Mayor, because I think the context does matter, actually. So the school district of Philadelphia has also come under fire for the opening of dangerous schools that had, including asbestos, open asbestos lines, the prevalence of lead that actually poisoned a child, an elementary school child in the Northeast, mold that has sent children to the emergency room in hospitals, including a teacher who is now suffering from a bizarre form of only asbestos-related cancer. I felt like the school district had failed, and I made it clear that our city is going to do what is necessary to enforce the safety and well-being so that every family, every parent knows that, and every educator and school staff know that when they walk into a building, this city is going to look out for them. We are not going to tolerate the poisoning and the destruction of people's lives in the name of, a bunch of whatever that they're suing over. And I also think that lawsuit is going to be resolved. I do not think it's healthy or safe for, the district to be standing on the position that it is.
Okay. You voted against Bill 180888, commonly known as the Farmer Bill. In retrospect, do you think it was a mistake for you to vote against that bill when you potentially had either an actual or an appearance of conflict of interest, given that your husband at the time worked for AmerisourceBergen, which is one of the largest drug distributors in the country, recently settled a $6.1 billion settlement with the...
Thank you for telling me my husband's job. I know what his job is.
Let me finish the question. That's between the two of you. Given the massive nature of the opioid crisis across the country, and especially here in Philadelphia,
Yes.
should you have voted in that matter, or should you have abstained?
Okay. So to be clear, only 5 people out of 17 voted for that bill. 12 out of 17 did not support that bill, including none of the mayoral candidates who are on council at the time. That bill was deeply flawed, and I think that there was ample evidence that it,
My question was about actual or perceived conflict of interest, given your special relationship with the pharmaceutical industry. That's the question.
So I understand, and as I said, I stand by that vote as it was, because I think, it was very clear. No, it did not have support from a vast majority, a super majority of council.
I understand. Okay. All right. The question was about recusal, but in an op-ed a few years ago, you said, as a charter school founder myself, I believe there is a discrete and limited role for charters within a vibrant public school system. Yet in many instances, you have actively proclaimed opposition to charter schools all across the city, and in some instances in Black and brown communities. Yet you are a charter school founder. But in many instances in the city, you run opposed to charters, notwithstanding your earlier support or statement of support in an op-ed that you wrote. Are you for charters or against charters?
So I am very clear that as mayor, my job is to be the mayor for every child in every school system, public, private, parochial, and charter. The charter world has changed dramatically over 30 years. I've been part of that conversation over a period of 30 years. And it has evolved over time. And as you would have seen in the time period when, under your administration, 30 public schools were shut down. And in return, charter schools at the same amount were expanded dramatically to replace those public
Those
schools.
students left those schools, and the buildings were in terrible shape, and the kids weren't getting a great education. And the school district was in financial crisis during the Great Recession. That's why those schools closed.
Clarity, I'm referring to schools that you actually took as public and then converted directly over to charter.
You mean what the superintendent did? You mean what the superintendent did? I supported his actions, but let's be, if you want to be technical about it, right?
Yeah, we
At the
can
time, we had a SRC,
Yes, where we
the Board of Education that we had.
So I have been very clear that yes, I oppose those types of practices. In fact, I worked with one of my colleagues on city council that proved that parents did not want to see that conversion when, under your school system, they were forced into a vote and to a horrible kind of situation where they were literally told they would get no funding or support if they remained public, but they would get all these resources if they went charter. I thought that was a warped conversation, and I felt like it was an important time for us to have a counterbalance, because fundamentally, people can say as much as they want. The mayor is directly responsible for the schools under district control. Those are the ones that I need to see in better shape than they were before. If there's any kind of critique of me or anything about me, I think that they would say that I'm one of the district's harshest critics. I have held that system to account for the failures that it has done in not appropriately educating young people and forcing them to seek literally any other option, many of which are very poor, because those schools are not in shape. As mayor, I am determined to make sure that our public schools come back to vitality and vibrancy, and that they are a deserving alternative in that choice landscape.
And I think we also know that many of those schools, whether they were district schools or not, or parents seeking a different experience for their children. I'm only questioning the seeming potential contradiction in that you started a charter school, but that in many instances in Black and brown communities, you've been opposed to those charter schools. Where do those parents' voices get to be? They left the public school system. They didn't move to Kansas. They left the school system, walked past their neighborhood school, and went to another school.
Yeah. So
Just trying to understand the distinction here of starting your own, but being opposed to others.
So, Mr. Mayor, here's what I would say, is that I probably wouldn't be on this stage if not for the decisions that occurred under your administration. We are very different people. No, I'm just saying, we are very different people. And I always knew that when I came in and saw, my children suffered the consequences of not having nurses and counselors in their schools. My children suffered the consequences of seeing, parents that I was very close to suffer the consequences of seeing schools closed down in Black and brown neighborhoods, by the way, in public elementary schools, where there were whole swaths of the city that were now educational desert. So if you moved in there, you had no place to send your child to kindergarten. And I told myself, if I had the chance to be in a different position, I would show myself to be a different kind of leader. The fact that we see each other and we see things in vastly different lights, we are just in total disagreement. I would not be the same kind of leader who had done what I had witnessed at the time. And to be clear again, these are not, one day say one thing, another day say another. This was over 25 years of seeing a system evolve. The school that I started was in 2005. The system that I am fighting for, a city that I'm fighting for right now in 2023 and for 2033 and beyond, is for everybody, to have the kind of quality system that every child and every parent in the city deserves, and frankly, our city will not grow because of it. So I don't want to get too lost in this conversation about where things are going to be. This public school system needs to grow. I hope that if I'm held accountable for anything at the end of 4 years, it will be, have I helped grow the Philadelphia public school system? Because over the last 10 years of disinvestment in our city and the failure to actually renovate buildings, give our kids basic education, you know, Lower Merion is building a $140 million middle school for its 12-year-olds, okay? And our kids are playing on broken asphalt for playgrounds, and they go to schools that aren't even air conditioned, and 30 schools out of 216 were open for summer last year, and that cannot continue. So this is the thing that we're gonna try and change.
I appreciate all that. I'm very familiar with Lower Merion. I would just mention to you, I mean, you keep talking about the disinvestment. In the 08 to about 12 period of time, we saw the largest recurring investment in public education in modern times. While the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, under Tom Corbett, was cutting funding for education, I raised taxes 4 times for the school district, including during the election year in 2011, and convinced City Council that we did need to invest. It's also why we had our graduation rate for high school students go from 53% to 68% when I left. I'm just saying, all is not lost. It is not a horrible place. Some children actually graduated and went on to college. So, down to the last. You said this. You've got to have somebody when, as soon as they walk into the room, systems of oppression fall and new systems of opportunity are built. This is you. When I walk into the room, systems of oppression fall and new systems of opportunity come up. And everybody in this room knows it. I guess I just have to say, I mean, I literally never heard Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi ever say anything like that. But I guess I just want to ask, I mean, is that what happened when you walked into the Union League?
As a city, we have been ruled by an old, antiquated form of politics that have left us far too comfortable for far too long. And I am trying to turn that around. I'm obviously not taking credit and saying that I'm gonna, you know, do all this stuff. But yeah, is that my attitude when I come into a room? Absolutely fucking absolutely. I mean, I am trying to stop terrible things from happening to people. And I am trying in its space. I literally said, systems of opportunity come up. Is that a threat to anybody here? Because if it is, we're in the wrong room. This is not the
I was
Philadelphia.
trying to understand that everything was false when you walked in. I mean, it was usually no words. It's an interesting statement.
Well, I think it is an attitude that I have. I did not come in here to hold and become a bench warmer. I'm not here after 4 terms on city council or whatever, multiple years of being a career elected. I came here to show people that we do not have to live like this, that we can actually fix the things that hold us back, and the most biggest thing that holds us back is us. It's not actually all these forces that are out there. It's the failure to get in and talk to communities, to tell and build a needs-based budget, to recognize that, no, I don't have enough money to fix everything in the world, but you know what I do have? I have a great idea, and I can leverage money. I can show you that we can topple an eviction system, you and everybody else will want to make that possible, because a roof over somebody's head is literally the first step to stability and opportunity. And I will do that for education, and I'm going to do that for job opportunity, and I'm going to do that for our mental health and well-being, to bring our kids back to freaking life, and I'm going to do that to bring this city into the modern era and stop giving us the same tired solutions that hold people back all the time.
All right. Love this. Let's go to Charles Ellison for, how are we doing on time here? We're pretty good for 5 to 8 minutes of questions.
8 minutes, all right.
Oh, 7. We'll settle at 7.
All right.
All right, 8.
Take it. Yeah, thank you. All right, good evening, Councilman. How you doing?
Thank you, Charles.
What's up?
Good to see
All
you.
right, good to see you. Okay, these are questions from the audience. What data points should Philadelphia residents use to measure quality of life?
So I think life expectancy, health and well-being, that is very important to me. I think it's profoundly essential, and I'm glad that Dr. Leapart, you're here on this stage, because honestly, I don't think we've talked enough about health. But, you know, it is horrifying. The life expectancy differences between two zip codes less than half a mile apart can be, you know, 20 to 25 years or more. And we're the largest city in the country that doesn't even have a public hospital network. So yes, I am going to make life expectancy and the health and well-being of people of all ages to be a #1 priority for me. I want to make sure that whether it's a young teenager living in North Philadelphia or whether it is a mom who is trying to get health care from an institution for her baby to be born healthy and whole, that those things are measured and that we are held accountable to that as a city. I think there's no question that I'm going to be focused in on and to me that's related directly to safety. It's just that, you know, homicides and these things, I need not just for homicides to go down, I need the health and well-being of individuals to rise. Because those two things, you can see the homicides go down and you cannot see an improvement in health and well-being of our neighborhoods and communities. I've got to see that truly rise, and then I know we'll be a better city. Education and the education of our young people, absolutely. And then I would like to see a 50% growth in the number of businesses that are here in Philadelphia as well.
Okay, next question. Philadelphia is still technically a majority black city. Are you pro-black? What will you do specifically for black people?
Well, I'm very proud to have had all of my policy agendas in City Council led by a black woman. I'm very proud that my outreach and all of my work in terms of reaching people have been led for my City Council body by black leaders. I'm very proud that everything that I have, all the work that we've done, whether it's around schools or around eviction prevention or the fight for a fair work week and basic labor rights that are due to people, have been led by black and brown people all over the city of Philadelphia. So that answer is yes. I am pro-black. I hope that I can demonstrate it, and I hope that it's not just me up here saying it, but that it's a 30-year track record of having done it.
If you become mayor, what would you do for the thousands of renters that have a plethora of issues from landlords that the city of Philadelphia give licenses to and never check to make sure their properties are habitable and that they maintain their properties?
Yes, thank you for asking that question from anyone in the audience. So, Philadelphia has to change. We are a city that has, a lot of new renters. In fact, I think we've tipped over 50%. And this is a community that deserves to have rights and protections. And our protections right now are really behind almost every other major American city. And so I would like to make sure that we are working in concert with communities, with landlord associations and others to make sure that we find a really robust place for people to say that this is a place that they can live. I do think I'm very proud of the work that we've done on the eviction prevention work. It's not just about stopping evictions. We've created over 4 years a bi-monthly table that continues to meet on a regular basis. It has a large group of advocates, city agencies, communities, landlord associations that are continuing to figure out this landscape. I do hope that we have a vibrant city council and a new leadership within the administration that takes on the challenges of rising rents and other types of things and makes sure that we are building a city that remains affordable, that remains housing first, and that we ensure that the people who really need and are priced out of markets are going to find a place to call home.
Next question. Your stance is anti-charter school, but you started a charter school that benefited your kids. You claimed to condemn the Union League, but then you attended an event there. These are two examples of your hypocrisy. How can Philadelphians, and especially Black Philadelphians, trust you?
So I would say I'm pro-public education, and I'm pro-education and pro-child. And what I will say is that, as I said before about the Union League, I have made it very clear that attending an event there sent the wrong message. And I have fought for safe and inclusive spaces all my life. I have fought Ron DeSantis' policies long before they ever made their way over to the Union League. I have a lifetime of fighting for immigrant rights, for civil and voting rights here in the city of Philadelphia, for making sure that there are protections for LGBT and especially trans youth. And I will continue as mayor to make sure that Ron DeSantis' policies never ever become normalized in this city that we call home. And I hope I have the grace to be judged on a track record of 30 years. We will let people decide that.
What will you do in the first 100 days to address the drug crisis in Kensington?
So the drug crisis in Kensington, is serious. It's obviously something that has not come up over a short period of time, but it has to end under my administration. The open air drug markets and other things have to come to a close, and reclaiming Kensington and other places as neighborhoods that should be for neighbors. But I'm also very clear that this is not just about marginalization or anything like that. What Kensington lacks and what cities all across the Philadelphia lack is a real investment in those communities. So for my 100 days, I hope the first things that people see are, one, we are cleaning up right away, that we are delivering city services. I think every civic and public space is immediately opened up and put into vibrant use. That includes making sure that McPherson Square is maybe an outpost for another part of City Hall. It's making sure that our neighbors there know that I don't consider Kensington just be a Kensington problem. It's not only just a city problem, it's a regional issue. And I'm gonna try to work with communities and members there to make sure that happens. But I am also gonna emphasize, especially for this community, because there was a really powerful story written in the former public school notebook, Chalkbeat, about elementary school kids who are walking to and from Gloria Casara's elementary school. And these are children who are, they're in kindergarten and 10 years old, and they are articulating out some of the things that they are witnessing. I want safe passage to and from school. And if that means that we're using SEPTA or new school buses to get kids moving back and forth, or if we're utilizing SEPTA, town watches, our police department, and our school district, to say that this city shuts down between 7 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 5 p.m. so that our kids know that all eyes are on them, and that at least for this amount of time, if we stop what we're doing and we make sure our kids get to and from school safely, I don't think we're just a safer city. I think we're a better society.
One more.
In May last year, Philadelphians voted by a margin of 72-28% to approve an amendment to the Home Rule Charter to expand and place qualifications on the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Did you support this measure? And how do you see it impacting the city during your term as mayor?
So I think that one of the things that I hope we can do with zoning, which is a very complicated issue in the city of Philadelphia, again, I want our city to be seen in a much more proactive, unified, aggressively planned light. I would like us to have common rules that go across communities and neighborhoods. I would like to see developers held accountable for the promises that they make in any kind of thing, and not to see like parcel by parcel kinds of exceptions to things. As mayor, I hope that the strength of our city will be the ability to not have things be just parcel by parcel zoning. We'll rely on a really strong mayor who is able to deliver a really strong vision on planning, development, protections for communities, so that we can remain long-term here, but also allow vibrant growth, because we got to grow Philadelphia, and we can't be afraid of any of that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for URD, and thank you, former Councilman.
Thank you, everybody.
For your public service. I have one last question for you. I've asked everyone this. If elected mayor, would you come back to a room like this with these people for an annual performance review?
If the room is like this, absolutely.
All right. Thank you all. Check back to the citizen, because we'd like to keep this going. We're gonna